In this segment, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the object properties and the various things that we can control within the object properties. So to get started, I'm just going to create a quick simple shape of an ellipse, and then when I right click, it finishes making that shape and it becomes selected. And if it wasn't selected, I could easily select it by just using the rectangular selection tool. Click on the object to see the object details or object properties. Now, the object properties are shown here in the box on the right hand side. And so what I can tell about this object, well, first of all, looking down at my color palette at the bottom, I can see that it's set to have a light blue fill and a dark blue outline. Now, I can change that to be any color I want. If I would like to have a red fill, I simply come to my color palette, find the color red I want, and if I left click over the lower right, I change the fill color to be red. If I choose to click in the upper left, so I'll choose maybe, let's say purple, and so I'll click for the purple color in the upper left. That changes the outline color or the pen color. So basically that's how you can control the colors for your objects. Now, when I click on the object and select it, over here my object properties relates more to the type of stitch or what is being filled in or outlined around these areas. So you have two tabs. One is for the pen or the outline, and the other one is for the fill. And so right now the fill on this is just set to be none. So there's no fill been applied yet, and it just shows us that the pink color in there or the red color in there to represent that that's the color it would be if we applied a fill, but it's right now set just as empty or none. So on the fill tab. So just as an example, you would be able to choose applique, and when you choose applique, you get the ability to control the offset. So that's like a setting that's specific to applique, and so that would offset the cut lines from the center, basically with no change at all. Then your applique is going to sew right along the edge of the shape. But if you offset it, so if I choose offset and then move that, let's just say I choose in millimeters, what I say 2 millimeters, and hit enter, and you can see that it's offset that by 2 millimeters. So that's what the settings are. So each time you change the type of fill or the type of outline, you'll get different parameters that you can control for that object. So for example, if I chose to have a net fill, now we can see, first of all, this is what the net fill looks like. I can control the size of the cell, and I can control the offset, and I can control the angle. So for example, if we want, we could make this a little bit bigger cell. I'll make it 3 millimeters. And so you can see that it's increased the size of the cells. And if I want to change the angle, I'll put it on 45, and it'll change the angle of those little crosses or little net fill anyways. So we also have the array fill, and when I choose array fill, it actually will open up like a clip art manager, which would give us the ability to choose the specific clip art that we wanted to work with for this shape. And my segment is so with the clip art manager, I could then choose which style of embroidery or which piece of embroidery I'd like to fill this shape in. So I'll go ahead and choose this little happy star and say insert that. And then what I have to do is I have to click and drag to set the size of the little star. See, my little star's there, and I have to kind of decide how big I want it to be, and then it's going to fill in this area with that little clip art star that I chose. And I'm going to create a separate segment for the array because there's several different choices for the fill and different types of spacings that you can control to how the array is filled in. So you can learn more about using array fill in a follow-up video on this training. And similarly with crystal fill, I'll show you the crystal fill for this area, but I'm going to follow up on crystal fill with a separate video to go through all of the different choices that come up under the object properties for crystal fill as well, just because there's a lot of different things that we could choose, so I'll make those a separate video. But that's choosing your fill type, so it's whether it's a net fill or an array or a crystal pen, or the outline of this shape. And right now it's set as a running stitch, and these would be the choices for the running stitch. So you could actually, right now it's set just as a sort of standard single run line with number of passes being 1. Well, I could increase that to be more than one time around. I could apply an offset to move that inside or outside of the object if I wanted to. So maybe we'll put it out by 2, whoops, not 20. How about we go with just 2 is what I was thinking. So give myself an offset for that. You can also apply styles to it. So for example, if I click on this, you'll see here that we get whatever chain, or I've got the applique stitch, or all sorts of different types of stitches that can be applied as the style of running stitch. So you can see here that there's quite a large list of little things that can be applied along your run stitch that give you different types of stitches and looks. And so you have the ability to come in and control the length of your stitch if you want to, so changing the size. And this is a little bit more about the sequence control, and whether you're going to have automatically have the software control the sequence, so you can put it to start, to end, or automatic, let the software decide where it belongs. And for overlaps, whether you want it to the software to automatically decide how to remove where there's 2 layers that are overlapping, or whether you never want the software to remove parts of an object because it's overlapping, or always remove. So this is to do with when you have 2 embroidery objects that are overlapped, how should that be dealt with. And so yeah, these are the types of settings for the run stitch. And if I change this to be a satin serial, now I have again the ability to control or create an offset if I want to. So again, I can go ahead and put in a 2mm offset, and it'll push that 2 millimeters outside of my shape. I also have, and this is maybe something I could show, right now my satin serial is set very small at 0.1 of a millimeter, which I believe will get default to be like a 1 millimeter wide. Let's measure it just to see. Measure. The actual length of the stitch is about 0.05 of an inch, which that's something that I'm going to follow up on as well, how we can get this to come up in metric, because it's difficult to deal with such small decimal points like that. And if we go into our actual options, we can choose the metric system, and it'll make small measurements like that a little bit easier to read. But my guess is it's about a 1 millimeter column. Now what I wanted to show, I guess, was that I could, and I'll just let go of that tool, come to my tool options and control the width of this column. So here the outline is set at 0.01 of an inch, but I could make that bigger, like why don't we say 0.2 of an inch. And you see that you get quite a big wide satin stitch column. Now I'm going to select that object again. There we are here. Select it. So here's where now that my satin column is so wide, maybe I'd like to apply to have a pattern to it. And so for example, if I click on this, you'll see, and maybe I need to zoom in a little bit so we can see that it actually applies this pattern to the stitching there. So there's all different styles of weave fill that could be applied to this satin column, or this outline of this shape. So that's what all these different patterns are. And we also have the ability to go in and manually control. So by default, all of these things are controlled by the fabric setting that we choose at the beginning of a design. But if you want to take specific control of that, you can come in here and override it and type in a specific density that you want, or a specific stitch length that you want, or a specific compensation amount, which would make it a little bit fatter, kind of deal with things like pull and applying a pull compensation. In other words, it'll it's set, if compensation set at 0.5, it means that my stitches will be 0.5 of a millimeter beyond the shape that was actually created. You can control the underlay, take control of your underlay, and then choose from a list, a pop-up list, from tacking, single, double, zigzag, cross, and then combine zigzag plus edge, cross, plus. So these are different styles of underlay that you could choose for your design. And again, when you don't choose them, then they're just selected by default based upon the fabric settings. And again, the whole idea of sequence control and remove overlaps, same as it was with the run stitch. Now you can also do an array for your outline, and so why don't I try and do that? So I'll choose array again, and the clip art library comes up, and this time if I choose that little heart and say insert, and then I have to again set the size of the little heart, what it's going to be, so I'll choose a size, and then you'll see that it applies my heart around the shape. And in this case, I could choose to offset it, first of all, or I can control the spacing. So if I want to insert some extra spacing in between those hearts, I can control the spacing. And if I want to, now that I've created the sort of array outline, I could actually choose this button, and it would separate that into individual so that each one of these hearts could be individually selected and modified. So, and again, I will be talking about array and crystal more in a sort of separate video. So, and then I guess the final choice would be crystals for your outline. And when I choose crystals, it's going to apply crystals around that outline. And I would need to choose a crystal of what crystal I want it to be on that outline. And let's see, and a size for my crystal. Yeah, and now if I look closely, you can see that it's put those crystals around the outline of my shape. So that's an overview of the object properties, and as you can see, they change. So you have the ability to choose the color and then choose the style of fill and outline for each object that you create. So yeah, also maybe want to refer back for the video that I'm going to include specifically for more information about doing crystal outlines and fills and the array outlines and fills.